for today's meeting. I'll call to order the meeting of November 19th, 2008. We have an agenda prepared for today with 4 items, and normally speaking, we take them in order as shown on the agenda, but we can also make some minor adjustments in the order as necessary. So the first item on the agenda is whether or not there are any continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of any new items. Staff?
There are not.
No changes. Okay. Announcements and appeals?
No.
No announcements. Okay. Or appeals. I'm aware of one pending appeal, but it's not a modification project. It was a lot line adjustment and performance standard permit. It's a show decision that's still outstanding. But other than that, there are no appeals. And we're hoping there will be none after today. Okay. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. This would be a general public comment. It's not for any of the particular projects. Is anyone present that would like to make a general public statement? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the projects. The first project on the agenda is 41 South Ontario Road. The applicant, please come up. We'll follow the procedure outlined for public meetings that begins with staff, a brief staff report.
Good morning and thank you. I need to spread this for the viewing audience, please. Thank you. Project site, which is approximately 6,500 square feet, is located on the corner of Ontario and San Pablo. Current development on site consists of a single-family residence with its front door here and 2-car garage with access off of San Pablo. The proposed project involves a pretty significant remodel of this portion of the house, and because of the remodel and floor plan configuration, some window changes are being proposed in the portion identified here in orange, which is currently non-conforming to the 20-foot setback off of San Pablo. Staff readily supports these type of modification requests. It's not intensifying floor area. It's not making alterations that intensify or impact adjacent neighboring uses. Simply reconfiguration of some windows and the addition of a new chimney element here for a fireplace within the living room area. The applicant has come today, I think, with a slightly larger chimney, but I'll let him present that as a part of his presentation. This is the one that staff was prepared to make a recommendation on. We are asking for support of this project as submitted, with the condition that the overheight fence located here within close proximity of the driveway be reduced or relocated in accordance with our current standards.
Thank you, Ms. Malazzo. I reviewed the plan submittal and the photographs. I wasn't able to make a site visit out to your site, but I thought the photos were really sufficient to understand the project. But I did have just 1 or 2 minor comments. I was curious what the staff thought. I'd never really seen the whole single-family code listed on a plan sheet. That struck me as odd. And then here, having all the call-outs versus, well, you could have that, but in addition to the more traditional way to show walls that are changing in terms of those to remain solid and then those that are changing and the walls being, differentiated. It made it a little hard for me to review the plan. Not too difficult given the small scope of the plan, but it was just, this is showing that this wall is changing, this little crosshatched. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then this wall is not changing.
Correct.
Okay. And then this has a note as a new window, but this wall is not changing.
Correct.
It's not coming out. Then this one is changing. Okay. And the staff report said no change in footprint, and I just wanted to make sure whether or not there was a change in floor area at all.
No.
Okay. Normally, or not normally, but I've also been accustomed to seeing the staff recommendations say no increase in floor area. So I just
Okay.
You know, footprint, floor area are very similar, but I just wasn't sure, so that was a really
The
minor
applicant
question.
just has mentioned that because of the extent of the alteration, the wall is going to come down, but it's going to be replaced in its existing distance
Okay.
from the front lot line.
And that I did understand, and that's fine. Okay, so I'll turn it over to you if you would identify yourself.
My name's Matt Gridius. I'm the agent and designer for the Roberts,
Okay.
Nelson and Kathy Roberts. And I think the only comment I have today is that we're looking at modifying the fireplace, and it's not a change in what the fireplace is. It's just the constructability of how we end up framing it. We might have 3 or 4 inches of difference between the width and the depth from the existing wall. So that's my main thing. I've brought adjusted the
Okay,
plans
let's
showing
look at that.
You want to just turn to the same sheet for like for
Sure.
like?
Well, actually, yeah. Will I be able to tell the difference? Maybe, maybe it's the site plan. Did you dimension something different on the setback?
What I showed on the site plan is basically the same thing. It's all it did is shifted a little bit to the would that be the west, and then which actually bought us more space, but not a lot because we ended up pushing it out a little bit. It has to do with we're trying to select 2 different fireplaces, and it's going to
Okay.
be a comment on the structural engineer's part mainly.
That's
Are you okay
fine.
with
That's
that?
6 inches different than what staff had reviewed.
Right.
Yeah.
Your phone message, I don't know, I assumed it was going to be a foot or
No,
2
no.
difference.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. How about if we move to the public hearing portion?
Okay.
Is there anyone here to comment on 41 South Ontaire? Okay, sir, if you could please come up. We have a seat for you and a microphone, and if you can complete a speaker slip before you leave today, we have them over there on the table, the orange, so we can have you for the record.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Michael Smith. I was just curious, is the house still, I couldn't see, is it still a single-story house?
Yes.
And the roof line's not changing?
Right.
Interior
Come-
remodel.
Why don't you come and look at the plan?
Okay, that's my own comment. Thank you.
Okay. What we were just discussing is the area that's changing. I was going through because I wanted to be sure exactly what walls and everything were changing. So they're doing an interior remodel. See all these crosshatched? Those are where the walls are changing and new windows in this new front window. So it's this side by San Pablo
Okay.
of the existing one-story home.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here for 41 South Ontaire? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. I think we've discussed the project. Are there any other comments from staff or the applicant?
One of the comments that was brought up was the removing of the fence, and we were just curious about keeping the hedge portion of it. If we had to take the fence down, but keep the hedge portion that's right there. If it's total removal or if it's just lowering the height.
Lowering would be an
Okay.
adequate solution as well. 3.5 feet just within the first 10 feet off of the driveway.
Okay.
And that applies to both the hedge and the fence.
Okay. That's fine.
So rather than removal, compliance with height is fine.
Okay.
Great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so let me double check that condition. It states that the condition is that the existing fence, and maybe we should say and hedge, that encloses the yard between the residence and garage be brought into compliance. So that gives you the option of removal or reducing. Okay, I'm approving your modification as requested for the front yard encroachments and changes to the windows per the staff recommendation and findings and subject to the one condition regarding the fence and hedge. Okay, all decisions of the staff hearing officer are appealable within 10 calendar days, and appeals are considered by the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission also has an oversight of projects and decisions that are made here. But basically, you're ready to proceed. If anything happened at all regarding appeals or interest on the Planning Commission, Ms. Milazzo would be in touch with you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very
Thanks.
much. Get on your way out. Okay. We're on for our next item, which is an application of Don Sherry regarding the property at 309 Palisades Drive.
I received this late yesterday, a letter of support from a neighbor.
Hi.
Wants to be over there for some reason.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect for
Okay,
the project.
Project site is approximately 8,000 square feet located on Palisades Drive. Current development on site consists of a two-story single-family residence here, an attached carport that was allowed in 1985 to be built 2 feet from the property line with a deck on top. The proposed project involves demolition of this portion of the structure, the carport with the overhead deck, and the construction of a new garage 4 feet from the property line with habitable space that observes the required 6-foot interior yard setback. Staff's position that the improvements being proposed are appropriate for the site. It actually increases a setback. A solid wall construction helps alleviate any impacts to an adjacent neighbor. The immediate neighbors, I think, are, and is that who that is by?
Lottie Hornman?
Okay.
Yeah, that's this.
Right.
This neighbor here?
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
grateful to not have the open carport and the upper level deck now, and instead have solid wall construction with habitable space. The design of the construction has been sensitive to impacts associated with the second story, although that isn't up for the modification review today. Staff is asking for support of the project as it's submitted, with the condition that we do realize the records do indicate that the fence and hedge along these 2 areas are non-conforming, but it did not address this interior lot line. Because of the visibility obstruction that this already creates, staff is asking that for the first 20 feet back here, a reduction to the maximum allowable 3.5 feet be placed on the plan, and that reduction occur so that backing out of the driveway, at least we open up the visibility into the public right-of-way. It is a populated neighborhood with lots of children, and I think the safety would be improved drastically with at least the reduction on that side.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Milazzo. I had an opportunity to visit the site yesterday and reviewed the plans and staff report, and as well as attached to the staff report were the minutes of the single-family board, so I feel I have a pretty good understanding of the project. I'm going to turn it over to the applicant to make your presentation. I just wanted to call out 1 or 2 things that you might address for me. It seemed to me, I think it was a comment made in the applicant's letter, that you looked for conforming options, and I don't recall if the staff commented on it. I think it would be a shame to put a conforming option right here in the middle of your yard. I didn't know if that's what you were alluding to when you said north or change the driveway or
Over
something.
here we looked at.
Staff recommended a conforming improvement, so they're saying it would be a shame to wipe out our yard.
Right.
We already have parking in that area.
Right. So I took it to mean that the staff, although you asked the applicant to explore that, the support of this is based on the fact that it has historically been used that way, and it's actually an improvement. Even though there may be a conforming option otherwise, I feel like the conforming options, are putting the car first, over a really nice living environment that, I observe by ducking my head in here and looking at your yard. And although it's not really the focus of my review, I was just hoping that when you walk through the second-story addition, you could walk through that for me,
I was gonna
even
do
though
that.
it's not the modification. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll do that. That's what I was going to do anyway,
Okay.
because I did want everybody to realize that we did look at that and pursued all of our options.
Okay.
This is Jim Mitchell, the owner of the property.
That'd be-
And so what we have is, this is Jim's office and kind of family room right now.
Guest wing downstairs.
Yeah, it's a guest wing. It's a guest bedroom, the only other
Yeah.
guest wing that he has. And then you come up the stairs here. The stairs don't show, but that's the stair tower. There's a bathroom downstairs. And then the carport. As you go upstairs, what he essentially has is his dining room here and his kitchen that he just remodeled It's all new, and this is his existing really small living room. So the option that we looked at was, okay, could we bring the driveway in over here and put the garage over here? That would require replacing all of his cobblestone driveway, curb cut, apron, removal of the hedge that he got a mod for in the past, and moving everything over here and giving up all of his fruit trees in his yard over here. And then it would be, you'd walk up the stairs and you'd have, again, a really small living room. You'd walk into the kitchen and then have another room over here. And it just, rather than, for the purposes of a floor plan layout and functionality, we felt that the enlargement of this space and keeping the kitchen was a better design program. And also, putting it up here would mean that you'd come up the stairs and you'd have to put the yard here. I mean, the living room up here, and again, you'd have to drive in and have your car first, like you said, Betty. And we just felt that this was a much more natural use of the space, because this little living room right here is very, very small. It also is the best light and putting it on the north, he wouldn't get any light in that room either. And his views are out here, which really aren't that much of an ocean view, but
No, it looks into another's yard. What you'll
looks into
see
the
in one
yard.
of those pictures.
which
Right.
is another reason why when we put it over here, we knew that we were adding addition over the neighbor, and Jim worked with the neighbors on getting these windows higher, and SFDB asked us to make these windows as high as we could,
Right.
without making it feel claustrophobic in the room. So we also, in addition to that, put when we added the fireplace here, we put a seat, so you aren't actually standing right against the window and looking out the window. So the floor ends here. So we're giving one extra level of removal from the south property line. But that's the long answer to your question, is this: why didn't we locate it anywhere else? And it worked better for the floor plan to locate it here. One thing that I wanted to bring up on the site plan was, we completely understand the need to provide a little bit more of a conformance with visibility from the street. And the one thing I wanted to point out, and you probably noticed it when you were out there, but just in case you didn't,
Right.
this fence is 4.5 feet. So what would happen is, if we remove this down or lowered it to 3.5, it would be an existing 4.5-foot fence with a 7-foot high hedge behind that fence. By the way,
That's your neighbor, though.
that's the neighbor.
Right.
And then it would go, so I guess what we're asking is if there's any way we could continue the 4.5 here instead of the 3.5, because they built theirs at 4.5. And
I don't think you requested a modification for that.
No, we didn't, because we didn't know you were going to ask us to take it down. But now that this has come up, that's the only reason that we would, it was a request by Jim only.
Okay, well, we'll deal with that.
It,
Okay.
It'll just look like drop and then go
Yeah,
back up.
I understand.
And then there's no function other than look in their yard.
But of course, we'd understand if you can't do that. We just thought we'd
Yeah,
ask
there's a
because,
technical issue with that. It
Yeah.
wasn't requested, and, your request is
Yeah.
for your garage, the ground floor of the garage. Okay, well, keep going. Anything else?
no,
Okay. My understanding on that last point, Ms. Milazzo, the application didn't include any requests for modifications of fences, walls, or hedges. So.
right, because this was existing, we weren't asking it to be removed
Right.
or lowered.
Okay. And I can see in the photograph, I don't think I did walk down the driveway and I looked towards your neighbor, but we can see what we're dealing with right here in the photograph too. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Ms. Milazzo did just hand me a letter received yesterday from your neighbor, Lot Hornman. I feel that it would increase my visual privacy, cut down on sound, allow them to construct a more quality addition, and I believe the remodel, if granted as proposed, would be an asset. So they approve of your plan. Okay, is there anyone else here present that would like to speak on the project at 309 Palisades? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Okay. We spend a lot of time talking about fences and hedges. In fact, just last night we were at City Council on this subject. So I was intrigued by the letter that was attached to your application that found, when the modification was reviewed before, that this was non-conforming. And I was just trying to get more information about that, but I'm generally satisfied that that's the case. And I think all that this project's confirming regarding those hedges is that they be maintained at the maximum of 8.5 feet, as Ms. Malazzo's pointed out. Because you didn't request a modification here, I couldn't grant it if I wanted to, but I have a feeling that the staff position on that would be what it is now as well, is that since you have this non-conforming condition here, we'd like you to do what you can do. Your neighbor isn't really before us today. So whatever happens on their property, current condition or the future, I'm going to just leave that off the table. But again, last night talking with the council about fences and hedges, we pointed out to the council in that meeting that enforcing the hedge height around driveways and then not necessarily along other frontages could result in up and down, conditions. And I think that that's what you would have here too. Mm-hmm. So I realize that you would transition down, but I think that's appropriate. And just do your part in terms of your structure. It's your fence, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you just bring your fence down as the condition, I think that's how I should leave it today. Okay. And then again, having talked about the other options and understanding the staff position, I agree with the staff position that this is an appropriate improvement. This is the historical parking situation. It actually improves it by making it a more formal garage addition with the solid wall, and so I think the rationale for your modification is solid. So I'm approving the modification today, making the findings as recommended by the staff in the report, and subject to the condition that we've just been discussing. Let's see, is there anything else? Okay, and this approval is appealable within 10 calendar days. The decisions of the staff hearing officer can be appealed to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission also has an oversight. So if there was any interest on the part of the Planning Commission about this project, then you would be brought before them. Same 10-day appeal period, so your agent or yourself can be in touch with Ms. Malazzo. Otherwise, just schedule yourself back on the SFDB and proceed. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Rox, I'll come find you. I'll just give you all this. Here's your stuff. Excuse me. Oh, here's the photos, too. Okay, we'll start our next item in just a minute. Get settled here. Okay. Hold on, we're going to see what they're saying.
Hello.
Okay. The whole thing, everybody?
6 inches to
Can you all move down the road there?
About that.
Why don't you come on up? Okay, our next application is regarding the property at 331 North Milpas. We will have a staff report from Doug Zanini. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. This project is establishment of a medical marijuana dispensary within an existing 2,600 square foot tenant space at 2831 North Milpas Street. The applicant is proposing to have a maximum of 6 employees at any one time. Hours of operation are proposed to be 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. The applicant has submitted an operational plan in accordance with Chapter 28.80 of the zoning code, and staff has reviewed the plan in accordance with that code. The business was originally operated up the street at 816 North Milpas Street from 2006 to 2007, and was relocated to this location in August 2007, where it operated until March 2008, and the business was closed awaiting the issuance of this permit. The previous owner transferred the business, which was previously called Pacific Greens, Inc., to the current applicant, who was not involved with that previous business. It's now called Pacific Coast Collective, Inc. Since this application was made, there has been no correspondence from any members of the public either for or against the project. Just to highlight some of the issues associated with this is in the staff report there's an analysis of compliance with 2880. One of the main issues associated with this is there would be 2 entrances to this business. One off the street, off Milpas Street. This would be a new entrance, and the old entrance, which was off of a driveway and parking lot in the rear. And so this particular business is proposing to have 2 entrances to the dispensary room, which is in the center. There would be a controlled entry here, where there would be a security window where people would come and check in and then be able to pass into the dispensary. And same for the rear, there would be a check-in here, and then they could come through this reception area and into the dispensary area. The police department has reviewed this, and they looked at the double entry concept here, and they were okay as long as there were all the security cameras. There's 12 security cameras proposed throughout the project in order to keep an eye on and provide security for the entire project. Couple minor changes in the staff report. There was a discussion that there was a video camera installed by the property management company in the front. That's not correct. There would be a new security camera installed by the applicant. Staff is recommending approval of this based on the findings that the dispensary complies with the limitations and the locations permitted in Section 2880.060 of the zoning ordinance. The dispensary complies with the criteria set forth in 2880.090, which is the criteria for setting up for review of the dispensaries, and the operational requirements in 2880.070 of the municipal code. A couple minor modifications to the conditions of approval. These conditions were written up prior to this last plan being submitted. Therefore, condition number 3 talks about floor plan in conformance with a floor approval in conformance with floor plan submitted on September 23rd. This was submitted on November 7th. Submitted on November 7th. So just recommending a change to September 23rd to November 7th, which would eliminate condition number 6, because condition number 6 was requiring a modified security plan that showed the extra cameras. This plan does that, so condition number 6 would be out. And then just to highlight, one of the issues here is there's a driveway that comes out to Milpas Street, which is kind of a dangerous situation with regard to having pedestrians on that driveway as well as cars. So we're requesting that they put additional signs that no pedestrians are allowed on the driveway. And there's frosting on the glass in front here that would prohibit the police department from being able to look into the lobby as they drive by. And we're requesting that the frosting be removed off those front windows. So that concludes the staff report on that, in case you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I did have one or two questions, both for you and the applicant. So I'll just list my questions. You can answer the ones, and then when I turn it to the applicant, you can answer as part of your presentation. I think this is probably a question for Mr. Cotto, but I was involved with the council when they adopted the ordinance, and we set these limitations of the location. My recollection was that it's a certain distance, 500 feet from any school, but not child care centers.
Correct.
That
is correct.
Yeah, because child care centers can pop up in all kinds of different locations, I think that was the reason. Plus, there's a lot more oversight of the children in a child care
Correct.
setting.
The idea behind the locational limitations, at least for the schools, and that was basically primary school and secondary school limitation. And the reason that we didn't include childcare is because childcare normally parents drop off the children and pick them up, and they're not allowed to leave. And the idea with at least some of the older kids is they could leave the campus and get into some mischief. So with childcare, that's not an issue, and
Okay.
that's why childcare wasn't part of it.
So my understanding is that there is a child care operation. It's called Parma School.
That's correct.
Did you look into that one specifically?
I did.
Okay, good. Okay.
That is a child care center that's not a school. It used to be a school a long time ago, but I
Right.
did check in with the Santa Barbara School District because they run it, and it's definitely child care.
Okay.
And also the other possibility was Guadalupe Church, which used to have classrooms and a school there, but that no longer does. So this is not within 500 feet of a school.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, regarding, I think this condition, let's see. Did we have something in here about a report back? Let's see. It's conditioned upon the continued compliance shall operate in accordance with the operational prior commencement, the plan, signs. Prior to the anniversary date, it's condition 5. Prior to the anniversary date of the issuance of this permit, the operator shall submit an annual renewal fee if such a fee is established. So the city council has not established a fee?
Correct. Not yet. We haven't gone back with that yet.
Okay.
However, the
yeah.
ordinance, when we originally were reviewing the ordinance, there was the potential for a kind of a check-in on a periodic basis, and that was removed from the ordinance. So there is no requirement for an annual check-in. If there are enforcement issues, enforcement staff can bring it up and have it go to the planning commission for rescinding this permit. But otherwise there's no requirement to check in. But if there is a fee, and they did talk about, council did talk about a fee, then they would be responsible for paying that fee. We don't know what that fee is yet.
Okay, thank you. And then the question for the applicant. One of the issues is whether or not we've received input from the police department about number of calls to the area. And I understand that this is not officially the same ownership of Pacific Greens.
Correct.
But again, if you had, for the staff and the applicant, if you had any information about calls regarding Pacific Greens, I think there's a standard on number 3. Well, actually, there's standard number 2 listed in the staff report that the dispensary is not an area identified by the chief of police of high crime or a lot of activity, and we've heard from the police that it's not. Then item 3, for those applicants operating other dispensaries, there have not been significant calls. And I realize that you are technically not, but just down the road there was one. And if there's any, if the staff or you all have any factual information, I just thought that that would be good to have. So you can do that as part of your presentation. Okay, so if you please identify yourself
Okay.
and then present your project. Thank you.
My name is Jeff Restivo. would like to represent Pacific Coast Collective Incorporated, which is going to be the entity running the business. We are seeking to operate a professional, respectable dispensary in the city of Santa Barbara. Our goal is to provide safe access for patients with the proper prescription for the medication. We also are looking to provide supplements and vitamin and minerals, which isn't currently in the plan, but that was something that I wanted to put in the front area here. It's going to be natural, holistic herbs and vitamins and such things like that. The proposed location here on 331 North Milpas is an ideal commercial space with plenty of parking and is handicap accessible. With our security plans in place, I believe this should deter any criminal activity. About a year ago, there were as many as 20 dispensaries in the city of Santa Barbara. Most of these have closed down now, and there isn't a safe place for most patients to obtain their medication. We would be honored to be the first permitted location within the city. We feel we comply with all aspects of the ordinance, and we'd like to work with the city and state to abide by all laws set forth under the ordinance of California and the city of Santa Barbara. We want to provide a facility where patients can feel safe and comfortable. Being one of the first dispensaries to open, we want to set a high standard, and we want to be a respectable entity and business within the community. As far as your question about police activity, I am in a relationship with the previous owner. There was one incident that I was aware of on the other location in North Milpas where somebody had left the premises with their prescription, and some individuals kind of, I guess you call it like mugged or approached them and took that. And the police were called, and I think Lieutenant Martel was familiar with that, who did the walkthrough with us. And I think that was the one incident we can speak of, and that the person was, they were basically robbed for their prescription from the facility, and there was no cameras that viewed the incident. And I'm not sure whether the criminals were ever apprehended for that incident, but that was the only incident I've heard of.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Are you ready? Are you
I'm here.
comment on public hearing, or are you?
No, I'm here just to field any questions that you might have that pertain to the actual operation of the dispensary.
Okay, could you identify yourself?
My name is Joshua Braun.
Joshua Braun. Okay.
Josh is a good friend of mine, and he was a dispensary owner in Santa Barbara, one of the original dispensary owners, and I have kind of taken him on as a consultant, helping me out with everything, and he's been a big help to me.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next is a public hearing regarding this application at 331 North Milpas Street, the proposed medical marijuana dispensary. Is there anyone here for this item? Okay, seeing no one for this item, I'll close the public hearing. And we didn't receive any response to the public notice?
None.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank the staff and the applicant for doing a very thorough application review for the code. The primary determination that the staff hearing officer is charged with is being able to confirm that there is compliance with the code standards. I believe this is called is it called a performance standard permit?
We're calling it a medical marijuana dispensary permit.
Okay, but it follows that that procedure where this is an open public forum for a third independent party review, myself, to look in and see did the basis get covered adequately. One thing that interests me, and it was discussed in the staff report, is the size of the space. It's quite large. I don't have any experience in this business, so I have no idea. It just, is this the right size, too big, or what? It just seemed like a very large space. And you mentioned it today, I'm glad, because you also mentioned it on the site visit, of being able to sell other products. So I'm interested in having that be something that you can do.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from the staff, because I understood that there were some limitations on that. But if everyone ends up being favorable to it, I think the way that could happen is that you would amend your business plan, the official business plan, to explain what other products you'd like to sell.
Okay.
So, Mr. Zanini or Kato, do you have any comments about that? I think there was a concern at one point that paraphernalia type, head shop
Yeah.
type things not be sold
And that's not,
in association with medical marijuana dispensing.
yeah, and that's not what we
But
intend.
vitamins and all of those kinds of things, I can't imagine that there'd be a problem with that.
The ordinance does permit the hearing officer to approve other sales of other types of things,
Oh, okay,
as long as you review it and approve it.
okay. Mr. Kato's going to double check the ordinance, but I would say that looking at the conditions and your business plan,
Here's, I have a copy of the ordinance here.
okay.
Doug,
Where is the, let's see. So condition number 2 is the applicant shall operate dispensary in accordance with operational plan information submitted. And so we could amend condition number 2. Okay.
So this is the ordinance.
All right, retail sales of other items. The retail sales of dispensary-related medical marijuana use items may be allowed under the following circumstances. With approval of the staff hearing officer, a dispensary may conduct or encourage or engage in the commercial sale of products and goods and services in addition to the medical cannabis on terms and conditions consistent with this chapter. No dispensary shall or display any drug paraphernalia. So that part of the ordinance complies. That's separate number 2.
Okay.
So we're looking and talking about ordinance F1, which is separate from F2, the paraphernalia item.
Okay.
Okay. So I think you should amend your business plan to specify. Would you state what you're going to specify?
Yeah, I would amend the plan to say that we're going to sell holistic vitamins and minerals and basically supplements, like natural supplements that are non-prescription based, basically vitamins and minerals and maybe protein powders.
All right, so then condition 2 would say applicant shall operate the dispensary in accordance with the operational plan, comma, business plan as amended, and then say business plan, because that's what I thought this was called. Business plan. Here it says business operations plan. Anyway, operation plan as modified to include, and then just what you said, the supplements. And I think we have that on record, Gloria? Got that? Okay. And then the other changes of the conditions, as Mr. Zanini outlined, Condition 3 would reference the plan of November 7th, and Condition 6 would be deleted, and then it'd be renumbered from there. And the Condition 2 amendment I just made. Okay, so the findings, I am approved.
Ms. Weiss, before you do, I have a question for the applicant.
Okay.
One of the concerns we have is that there's 2 entrances with 2, what looks like you'll have to have 2 receptionists or something like that. When I originally went to visit the site, it was probably about 5 or 6 months ago now. No, not that long, but something like that. There was only 1 entrance, and it seemed quite, I don't know, rational, I guess.
Secure.
There's 1 entrance, secure. People would come in, 1 place, check in with the computer system, and then a security guard would escort them into the dispensary area. And now there's 2 entrances. How are you going to work that out?
We were planning on having a separate secretary and just kind of running it as 2 entrances from the front, having basically an extra person working that front door, depending on where they came in. I mean, whether we intend for them to be sitting there, all the time, depending on how busy it is. But there's also, I know with the back door, there's, you can tell when somebody comes to the door, the bell goes off or something. So, something like that would also work. So we know when somebody enters this door, which would give somebody time to get to the front door there. But I really don't think it would be a problem. Maybe an extra employee, which I considered in the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, from my point of view, I was concerned that only half of this plan, either half, didn't work. If all they had was the back half, I was really struggling with how I could make the findings for having a good storefront.
Right.
And if they only have the front, then I think we all would be struggling with the handicap access from the rear.
Right.
So, I feel this applicant is really taking on a lot of space, but in order to comply with our city standards, maybe you can negotiate not having that large storage room, but that's really up to you.
Okay.
Otherwise, I thought it made sense as it is.
It seems like it does.
Yeah.
I always worry about staffing and.
Well, and I was there yesterday, and it's completely empty, so it's hard to get a sense of how how it will be when you have people in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? I'm sorry, I was about to jump the gun here. Okay. All right. I find that the standards outlined in the city's ordinances are being met in terms of the medical dispensary permit that you've requested, so I'm approving that permit today. You may have heard me announce for the prior items that all decisions made by the staff hearing officer are appealable within 10 calendar days. Mm-hmm. The appeals are heard by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission also has an oversight where if they believe that the full Planning Commission should consider a case, they can pull it up and suspend this action and bring it before the Planning Commission.
Okay.
So we'll know that decision in this same 10-day calendar period. I will certainly be briefing the Commission on this action so they're aware that it was taken as
Okay.
it is the first one. So stay in touch with Doug and Danny, your main contacts. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And, oh darn, upstairs I left the phone number of the person that wanted to talk to you. I'll email you at some point, you and Danny, if someone interested. I just gave you mine and I'll stamp it later. We stamped the plan. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're shuffling for our next item. We'll begin that in just a moment. Okay, we're ready to begin with a brief staff report from Betsy Teeter regarding the project at 416-424 East Coda Street. Thank you.
Okay. The project involves the demolition of two existing one-story commercial structures where Hagen Printing is right now, and a proposal to build a new three-story apartment unit, 55 studio units and one two-bedroom manager's unit. Studio units are approximately 407 square feet, and they are going to be designated for very affordable housing, low-income housing. The project also involves the proposal to build an on-grade parking structure on the first floor, which is about a little over 13,000 square feet. So it's it's really three lots right now, and part of the project proposal is to merge them into one legal lot. So the proposal before you today is for 5 modifications. The first modification is for lot area modification, asking for bonus density for 32 units. Given the lot size under the code, there would be 23 units and 23 studio units and one two-bedroom unit allowed. But the applicant is, as I said, is asking for a bonus density to allow 32 additional units. Staff is supportive of this modification. We believe, given the nature of the project, that it's appropriate for the site and houses the maximum number feasible of these studio apartments. So we believe appropriate findings can be made to support that modification. The second modification is for a parking modification. And I had noted in the staff report that I believe that they needed 79 spaces, but I think it's actually 70 spaces, and the applicant, the Housing Authority, is asking for 40 spaces. And we support this modification because the Housing Authority administers several other projects where they are able to, they've developed monitoring programs through DMV, checking DMV records and just on-site monitoring. They have lease agreements that really limit the number of tenants that are allowed to have parking spaces. And from what I understand, their other projects really have been underparked. So we believe, again, that findings.
You mean overparked?
Well, they actually that they are using fewer spaces than they have.
Okay.
So that's what I've been told. But yeah,
Okay. You could say that term differently.
Okay.
I just wanted to get like
No, well,
less parking demand.
yeah, actually there is, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, and also we support it because it's downtown location. It's right on the crosstown bus line. So, and given the nature of the project, the tenants, for the most part, a lot of them will probably not have vehicles. And again, the Housing Authority will be controlling and has as a way to control the number of parking spaces. We do support the modification. And the remaining three are actually setback modifications. So I'll go over those. The required.
I'm not going to want you to move
Oh,
the plan
sorry.
too much. Sorry.
Okay. The first modification is to allow, this is the first floor. Turn it over. What we are calling roof decks. They're sort of like a patio. They encroach. The roof deck surrounds the perimeter of the property, and it encroaches a little less than 1 foot into the required interior 6-foot setback. Also, the parking garage also aligns with the roof deck and will encroach also. So we're requesting a modification for that, what we think is really a small encroachment, and we support this because, as you know, this property is zoned commercial and could be, if a commercial building is there, could be built out to the setbacks, and also because there are no other residential tenants adjacent to the property, we think the impacts are very minor. The second setback modification is for the roof deck. The garage does not need a modification for the rear setback because of the new zoning ordinance, which allows it to approach 3 feet. So it meets the zoning ordinance. But the roof deck needs a modification because, again, it encroaches approximately 1 foot into the rear setback. And again, we can support this because there are no other residential tenants adjacent to the property, and we think the impacts are quite minor. Let me turn it over to the third floor. The last setback is for there are 2 units of the project that will encroach into the required 20-foot setback for third floors. This changed with the new zoning amendments that went into effect. So it encroaches about 5 feet. And we support this because if they were to move this back, first of all, they'd either have to take out 2 units, or it would impact the open courtyard down below the plaza court, and it would make it dark, and it would certainly not be conducive to a good project. I mean, people would not be using we feel they would not be using the court if it was a dark, sort of closed space. So we support the modification. We think, again, we make the point that if this was a commercial structure, it would be built out to the setbacks, and we think the impacts are very minor. There's also I'll turn back to an architectural feature. It is tower that does encroach again into the setbacks, but it's really, we consider a minor design element encroachment, and I don't think it will have any impact on any of the neighboring projects. So also just to note, the Architecture Board of Review reviewed this project twice and made favorable comments and supported the mods. So we think staff does support approval of the modifications and believe that you can make the findings that are set forth in the staff report, subject to the conditions that are also attached to the staff report.
Thank you. I do have one or two questions for you.
Okay.
Thank you for noting that there have been some recent changes in the zoning ordinance, and so those have occurred since the time that the applicant began the process. And although I was involved in them, they were numerous, and it's hard to keep them all straight. And I was listening to what you said, but I'm going to ask that we go over them just a little bit more. So for parking structures in the commercial zone where the use is for an entirely residential project, the project must meet the R3, R4 standard.
Right.
Now, there was quite a bit of discussion about possibly changing the setback requirement for the R3 and R4 standard for parking. But my recollection was, in the end, it was possibly going to be an ABR waiver. And I see Ms. Reardon is here if we need her as a consultant on this ordinance. I just wanted to get clear, as of today, sitting here, I believe those ordinance amendments are in effect.
That is correct.
And so let's make
If
sure I understand
If I
them.
can clarify,
Okay.
the rear yard setback for parking structures was reduced to 3 feet,
Okay.
period. What you're thinking of is the interior setback for parking structures or parking garages and such. That was changed to be, it could be waived. It was remain 6 feet, but it could be a waiver by the ABR or the design review board on narrow lots, right?
Oh, on narrow lots.
Less than 55 feet wide.
Okay.
These are 60, 67, if you look at.
But
Okay.
But that is, in the R3 and R4 zone, when you're on a corner lot or two frontages, you get to choose your rear setback.
Right, so they chose
That's the
this
rear
one as
set-
the rear?
Correct. So that side, the garage doesn't need the modification,
Okay.
but the second story part does.
Yes,
And then on this side, it needs both.
because it's not a narrow lot. I'm sorry, I was forgetting the importance of the narrow lot. Right, okay. And so the required setback for the garage and the second story deck above on an interior line here is 6 feet.
Correct.
And they're proposing 5. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then on the front yard, I think we tried to simplify by in the new ordinance, and such that it's now, you're saying 20 feet.
For the third story.
For the
10 for the first and second, 20 for the third.
Okay. Whereas when the applicant started the process, I want to know, did their third-story front yard need a modification then?
No. Well, they were, I think it was 15.
No.
It's 16 feet now, so
No,
It
it was
needed a
one
mod
third
then?
the length.
I think, yes, I think it needed a mod then. Because
Okay.
the first story and the second story are set back less than 15 feet,
Correct.
right?
First
So in
floor,
order
second floor,
for-
10 feet.
So the way it used to work is almost the same way that it works now. If your third story square footage was less than half of your first story square footage, that hasn't changed, then there was this complicated formula that told you what your setback was. And in
Okay.
most cases, it was going to be about 20 to 25 feet. For a 60-foot wide lot, it would have been about 25 feet or something like that. So they would have needed that mod anyway.
Okay.
It's just, and it is easier. Now it's just 20 feet instead of this complicated formula for the third story.
Okay. Before I turn it over to you, I'd like to make a few requests to the applicant to incorporate into your comments. One is, this is a a significant project, and I asked the staff to focus on some of the zoning, discretionary matters before me today. But I would really appreciate a thorough presentation of your project as the design and applicant team to understand where you're coming from, why you designed it the way you did, and then you're focusing on the justification of the modifications, in particular these setback modifications. In terms of the lot area modification, of course, you're certainly welcome to explain your rationale. I think that the staff presentation and the record of the Housing Authority is fairly well understood, but certainly I don't want to shortcut you on any of those comments you'd like to make. And then on the parking modification, I just wanted to make sure that the Housing Authority is fully aware of all the conditions being recommended and that they're in the bus shelter business again. I happen to have some history with the Housing Authority on prior bus shelters, and I really want to make sure that we all understand the bus shelter conditions, as well as applicant any comments that you want to make on the 13 pages. I think it was 13. 13 pages of conditions of approval. So with that, I turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, my name is Mark Winke.
Christine Perron.
We're CPMW JV joint venture, and
Skip Szymanski with the Housing Authority, City of Santa Barbara.
okay, we're going to kind of step on each other's toes as we talk, just to kind of keep things moving and not keep it too formal.
Okay.
So Chris will jump in, and I'll jump in. It'll be kind of like a little party. This is the main lot. It's two pieces. It's two different lots, and that's where you were explaining earlier the building is. And the Housing Authority also bought that parcel, which goes to Olive Street when it was available. And early on, we had decided that for a much safer project, we were going to only have access from this side, not from Coda Street, which I also thought that was automobile access.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, so that's the existing parking lot as it is today. And it actually has an easement from this parcel that's written in the deed, so that this parcel can come through this area, and you can see the 20-foot easement written there, to exit their parcel because they park on a diagonal and it's too skinny. So that's really nice. It helped us work that through. So this is staying as parking, and this is then actually additional parking if we ever need it, but we thought the community garden idea was an excellent idea. It gives them the objective and the ability for the tenants here to actually get into growing their own foods and other things like that. Plus, it creates a nice landscape buffer at the front for this parcel. Okay, so the parcel is obviously, the green area is the setback areas on all sides. This is the front off Coda. It's in a floodplain, so the entire first section is raised about 2'6", 2'4", something like that. And if you look closely, there's a stone wall with some stairs coming up, stone wall across the face, a pilaster style wall, kind of like you'd see at on De La Guerra Street for Meridian Studios. And you come up a ramp on this section to qualify for ADA accessibility. And this is the main forecourt. And if you saw, if you remember from the front rendering, that's the main entry space with a little tower piece reminiscent of like 1920s Spanish colonial architecture. This side here is all office community space.
Let me just stop you 1 minute. The people that have been in the audience this morning, I think they're here for this project. Are you able to follow it sufficiently on, there's there and there's that television as well? I just want, okay. Got it? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's called community office space. It's basically flexible space. They can have what do you call them, meetings for some of the tenants that live there, and caseworker study type stuff, and then also flex space in here that they could do different things for the community itself.
Right, I wanted to ask a question about that.
Okay.
There's a similar community room in the, I think it's Casa Las Fuentes, or is it the El Carrillo?
Both, yeah.
Both of them. Both projects have a similar community room?
Yes.
Okay. And it's really not office? I mean, I just think that that's an odd, I think that might have been what threw the staff when they initially calculated the parking, the term office.
The offices, there will be 3 offices, and they're caseworkers that will be there. So they need to be there during the day to help the tenants and so on.
Right, so it's community room and related office space.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. And on this side is the manager's unit, acts as the gatekeeper, so to speak. So at this point, there's a privacy consideration that we're addressing. And this is starting to show up some of the architecture, the stairway that takes you to the second level, or you can pass through this area which takes you into the main first courtyard. These represent columns like an arcade, and then this is all open to above. And at that point, the individual units on this first floor can have access to this main courtyard. They also have private backyard court, little patio areas off their kitchen. And as you can tell, they're actually set back further. And what that allows for us is to have a bioswale for treating the rainwater treatment and polluted waters from the roofs and stuff in this section before it enters the curb and gutter. So both sections here and here, which we can get into further in the civil drawings if we need, and or the landscape plans, but also that same idea occurs on in portions of the back and then all across this side here before it exits the property. We've already gone to that trouble of analyzing and making sure all that works, which would be required anyways for building code. This is the parking podium, and at this point it's all on basically the same grade, and then it slopes up a little bit here to have ADA accessibility to the middle court. So this section is basically slightly sloped as a parking garage. It provides, as we can tell here, the 33 parking stalls and additional parking for bikes, which is a major consideration for the downtown workforce. Additional parking on the outside also, I think I mentioned earlier. Trash and recycling on this corner. The transformer for the Edison section electrical over here.
So I have a question on the parking garage as it relates to the mod. In order to have
the width?
Double loaded here, double loaded there, is this 56 and a half and 56 and a half the minimum required?
Correct, right.
It couldn't be brought in a foot?
The skinnier any parking garage gets, the wider the stalls get.
And reduce parking spaces.
Exactly.
And so what we did was when we evaluated this, we looked at, in order to think about this being an affordable project, the concerns for maximizing the parking under podium for costs this was the most efficient diagram that we could come up with for getting the needs that the housing authority wanted under podium.
Right. Well, I was just assuming that because I know there are very specific standards, so
Correct.
that
That's correct.
this
Yeah.
isn't.
And
I just wanted a confirmation that you're using the minimum standard.
Right, and as you know, they range from
Okay.
60-something feet to 50-something feet, but the wider ones have skinnier stalls, and the wider distance has a skinnier stall. So we have
Okay.
this dimension, which we believe works with the spirit of the ordinance, the 5-foot setbacks and all that as we started the project, and with the building code. And so we can't really make that any skinnier. Now, if we make it even a half a foot skinnier, then we lose parking stall one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here.
Okay.
So we continue to lose parking stalls, which we don't think is a benefit when you relate it back to the difference between,
Okay.
asking for the mod for one parking stall.
Okay, so that's that space. And when you are presenting the front, I just wanted to understand your thinking behind the front setback that's proposed versus a 20-foot. So maybe you'll do that when you show the elevations, but I didn't want to forget the
Okay.
other mod.
But as you can see from here, this is setback. This is modular construction. It's all stacks above each other. It's very modular. So this is actually an arcade. This is a setback for this unit, which is a private outdoor area, and these pieces come front. The premise of the idea is that here's Coda Street. It's a commercial street. And we have the facade of the street, which defines the space, and then we carve out the sections of the facade, right? And that allows archetypes such as courtyards and planar elements. So if you see this form here, that creates the streetscape, and then these other forms are recessed back. And the major section is cut out through here. And this is an architectural element, which is basically a thickened wall, which instead of being 10 feet, it's 9 feet.
It's a sticking at about 9.
Yeah.
It's a foot.
It's a foot in. And we think it works. If we didn't have the mod, we could have easily gotten rid of it before coming here, but we think architecturally it's worth the extra foot, and it kind of fell into the architectural.
And the Architectural Board of Review will work with you on that. I'm not going to comment on the
No,
tower.
yeah.
I'll just
They
leave that
thought
to
that was
them.
fine.
Okay.
And I think to speak to the units and that encroachment, I think the key to understanding this is understanding the modular construction. These are studio apartments. They're all identical. Again, this is efficiency of cost for an affordable housing project. And what we looked at is creating this module, and then you can almost go from back to front, and you go hold this back to its setback, you go units, you get kind of a minimum distance between these two units.
For fire code and stuff.
You get 2 units, you do minimum, you run these out, and you get a minimum distance. So that it's not a simple matter of just changing, like some other designs where you might have 5 different types of condos
Okay.
you're looking at that you could
Or a
skin
smaller
each up.
bedroom.
These are modular pieces that once we have to lose 4 feet, I believe it's a 4-foot encroachment, we start having to suddenly do significant alterations to get that to work. We believe that we've kept what is the purpose of this is a significant buffer for these residential units at 16 feet away from Curtis Street. We think it's consistent with the pattern of the architecture. There's a large building, the radio building next to us, that has a similar pattern. So for the design of it, it has no impact. We protect the residences, and we maintain a modular form that keeps our costs up at a reasonable level.
Right, and the reason I started explaining the cutbacks and the erosion and this layering of forms is because if this was a 3-story building, we could go right to 15 feet. So a 3-story building all across the facade here could also work, but we would rather architecturally articulate the facade in this fashion and not actually feel like we're being penalized for that 3rd level. So we have a 4-foot encroachment.
Okay, thank you. All right, back to you to complete your...
Right, and it was nice that Chris added that thing because these, as you can tell, are all the same units. They're very
Okay.
definitively designed to the ADA standards, to usability standards, and everything else. So there's not a lot of room to make them even a half-inch smaller. The 2nd floor, okay, so if you come in here, you come up the front, the steps here, there's a kind of an entry bridge that goes around that enters the units. The courtyard is here. This is the first main courtyard. So we have a forecourt, which introduces you as like a foyer. Come underneath this section, and you go into the main court, which is at grade, which is raised a couple of feet for floodplain. And then beyond, and these are obviously the units around, beyond is the community center. The community center is the heart of the project. You can see it from almost every unit. It's the center of the entire complex, and it has the main heart of the matter. This is where you have fun, you hang out, you have the movies, you have something to eat, you do your laundry, you chat, you play cards, you do all the kind of stuff that creates community. And it's right in the middle. From the first level, you can see it. You can come down the stairs and enjoy this area, and we'll get into later. This is only a 2-story portion, so this is sunlight all year, even in the winter. And not if it was 3 stories, then it would be not sunlit all in the wintertime. And then off this 2nd level, then there's also a rear patio area, which is called the rear courtyard deck. And then units surround that to create the spatial area, and also have a single planted tree like you'd see in European cities in the courtyard or in the main plaza. There's an exit to the rear, which you can have if you're walking or coming in off Olive Street, or the parking area there, or guest parking off at that section. That comes in off this backside here. This particular area is the podium of that parking garage, right? That line there is the double white line. Should be the same here, but we left it as an orange line to explain. This is actually 6 feet off the property line. The outside is 5 feet. The usable space, which we're using for the private outdoor space for these units when they get to enjoy it, is 6 feet off the property line.
That's really their front door, is it not?
It's a rear door.
Rear door, so there's a front door?
Yeah, you come into the units like here and here
Oh,
and here.
okay.
And then this is the kitchen, so if you want to open the door and maybe
For
have a
air
herb
and-
garden or sit out here and watch
I
the
see,
sunset
okay.
or whatever. So
Okay. So all the units have these 2 doors?
exactly.
Some are windows.
Some are
if
windows
they-
on the. If they don't, if you'd fall out and not have a deck.
Oh, over there.
Yeah, but the
Okay.
idea is all units have cross ventilation and sunlight.
Right.
Okay.
So on units like this, which we don't articulate each one individually, these might have planter boxes. This might have a little railing. This might have a little blah 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 that
Okay.
sticks out that allows you to open the window and get the cross ventilation, but also maybe animate your little window box
I see.
with
Okay.
herbs or whatever. Okay. Anything I missed on that floor? So the 3rd floor. Oops, this is the next page. This is where you start to see the real kind of composition of the massing. This area is actually 2nd-story roof, so it's the tile roof section, which you remember from the plan. This is the 3rd-story section, which is really adjacent to the radio building here. And we actually one of the
They
other reasons
actually
for setting this up.
attach, it almost looks like.
They do. There's
Yeah.
a wall here. There's their stairs. Oops,
Uh-huh.
over here, and then their second story, which is where their control room, I believe, or not the, what they call the broadcast room, is all glassed. That's set back, and it's actually up here, which we were really happy to accommodate with the setback here up to 15 feet, because now they can still see the view of the mountains and everything else. We're not like blocking them off so they all of a sudden lose their view. So we really are contiguous with the neighborhood with our massing study. This shows the units on this side. So as you come up the stairs, you have a stairway here, you have a couple of units on this side. This is all photovoltaics on the second story roof, which is a flat roof. So again, allowing the sun in, like I mentioned earlier, into this main courtyard. Third, and you come up this way, third story. So at this point, you have little views, peekaboo views over towards the mountains, right? As you enter through here, and then units along this side, elevator core, outdoor deck at this portion, which is significantly set back from the neighbor here, which just has parking and trees
that
here.
circular parking lot.
Yeah, and it has a couple of really nice palm trees. It's nice, but there's actually a really great corridor
Mountain
view
views,
through here, which is a nice, pleasant surprise. So you come through this area. This on the third level is above that level, because this is the community room below. So this is all open, but the massing is a 2-story volume space of the community room, right? And a community room has this larger volume space for.
I'm not following you here all of a sudden.
The second level is below here, so this
Right.
is open
Is
to
it
below.
roofed?
This is open double-story space for the community room,
Right, but
and the roof is on
there
top
should
of
be a
that.
roof here.
That's on top of the third level.
Oh, because there is still a building.
Yeah. So the
it's-
community room, which is below this, why it says open to below, the community space I talked about before, that's below this.
Right.
This
So
is the
this
third
is where
level.
you're seeing the roof.
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
Okay.
It makes more sense when you see the section.
Okay.
But just, and it has a little loft space above, so it has the ability to kind of congregate, play cards, watch a movie, have conversations, see a
Not on this level.
on the level below.
Level below.
But if you
Yeah,
want
you
to
already showed
escape and
that.
have a little conversation, do whatever, computers and stuff, they have a little loft space in here. So really, when
So this, you can yell down to someone on
bring
the
up
floor
some
below
coffee,
you? Okay.
check my laundry.
Yeah, okay.
So, and then there's other units across here, as you can plainly see. And so this is a courtyard with a little balcony walkway system that surrounds that space.
Okay.
And so that's a defined architectural feature of that rear courtyard. So everything is good.
I just don't understand why these doors are shown. Those are downstairs.
The latest drawing is shown
Yeah.
closed, but they're basically just glass. Just
Okay.
see, yeah. We saw that and then changed it, but we didn't want to make 9 more sets of prints. So. This again shows the flat roof areas, which we'll see in a second, and then also the pitched roof areas. And the idea behind the theme is the front has the most amount of tile that blends in with the city, and it has smaller heights and stuff like that. The rest of it is 3-story section here and 2-story section here, flat roofed areas with different parapet heights. And then those are the opportunities for all the photovoltaic panels to go on the roofs. Is that clear? So this is the elevations. Front.
So we've talked about the front.
The east elevation is actually the side that you would see if you were at that parking lot we just talked about, which is the mountain view. It's a segue.
My accountant is there.
Yeah.
So I've been there before.
Yeah. So your view will be somewhere in here as you drive through. But we really worked at making this look like it's the term architecturally articulated, meaning lots of pieces that combine a whole but are set back, moved around different heights. Maybe have a feeling that were built over time. Look around, all the stuff on the walls here, that kind of idea. So this section was 2-story with a roof, right? That's the courtyard section, area behind that. And then it steps up, and the 3-story levels are kind of made into little building blocks. You know, there's 4 units here. There's a simple articulated roof edge, maybe a little architectural finials on the corners and stuff. Set back again, roofs over this section that break down. This is a fence. There's a raised area I talked about much earlier for the floodplain. A fence between here and the existing garages that are across the east side there. Other forms here. And then any place...
Garages? Or you mean parking lot?
The front half here has a garage a parking lot for that garage.
Oh, the garage, the operating
The
garage.
operating, yeah.
Yes,
I
yes.
think it's a
Right.
Star something garage.
Right, right. Okay.
This is the opening, the parking when you come in from Olive Street.
Okay.
The stairs coming up. Any place that you see sort of a really nicely articulated artistic detailing, little tower forms, little higher pieces with tile, those are clues that this is an entry area.
Entry, right.
Okay.
Okay.
Little things like mirror doors that just stick out of the wall to create a ledge, like a block and stuff. We use these periodically to animate the facade again with massing and shadow study and just nice features. Window boxes, like I talked about earlier.
Well, I think we should just point to the west elevation as well. Like there are views from Laguna looking this way, so we took some extra effort to make sure that where you see this section, you're going to see some extra architectural detailing. We think of putting some colorful pots set into that wall, so there'll be some color, tile form, decorative wrought iron railing, and I think the most important thing we want to do is have a significant carved out piece that you see through and continue to see the mountains through that.
That was what we were talking about on the third floor.
That's on both sides.
Both
on
sides.
this side and,
Oh,
then
and
on this
Yeah.
side you're looking up
Oh,
here.
there. That was where you
With
pointed it
the
out to me.
setback of the
But
road.
on this west side, let's just look
That
at
faces Laguna Street.
And that's this big
Oh, it's
cutout.
over here. Okay.
If you remember, there's a big parking lot area over here too, as it goes through to Laguna. And in that area, from the public core, you can actually see from Laguna over the cars and trucks that are parked towards the mountains. There's a gap
Yes,
here,
yes,
right?
I definitely noticed that when I
So-
walked in the back. It's like open all the way to Laguna, more or less, with parking and storage, vehicles
Right.
and such.
And then that's
Yeah.
also that two-story element that helps with our sun. Also, you see that from Laguna, or towards the, kind of see through the sliver of two buildings here at Laguna towards Coda Street, and there's a significant two-story drop. So again, we see the mountains beyond.
Right, this is that two-story
Exactly.
piece. Okay.
Yeah. So again, I think it's easy to state there's these carve-out areas
Okay.
for view corridors and light and air and articulation of elements, and then lower sections and carve-out areas with and that's the rear elevation, which faces the south. Again, a 4-unit piece in a row, a little articulation on this corner, which is an air gap towards the south there. So that's kind
Okay.
of the kit of parts, pieces we're using to animate the facade. Massing.
Okay.
So this top drawing would basically be a section.
I think that that's okay.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
in terms of the description of the project for now, if I
Okay.
had a detailed question.
Okay.
But if you want to comment on the
Yes, I believe.
conditions of approval, any other justification for the modifications?
Yeah, I think if we could go over those quickly.
Okay.
I think first of all is the modification for the density.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this is a housing authority project. We're similar in our kind of density bonus that we're asking as I think CASA or certainly as El Carrillo, and that they've had great success. I think one other piece that didn't get mentioned about why this can be supportable is these studio units are just 450 square feet. The zoning allows for, I think it's a 1,600 square foot studio apartment. So it's just the scale of our pieces are much smaller, which I think also helps to support our modification request. I think that we also wanted to point out that the interior, if we could just look at the interior and rear yard setbacks, those are fundamentally for that garage and fundamentally to just simply allow those minimum turning radiuses that are required by Public Works. The residences do not encroach back there. We have never intention of doing this. This is a industrial encroachment in an industrial zone. Or, well, maybe it's not industrial, but
It's non-residential.
non-residential
It's the parking. Yes.
And we wanted to talk again about that 2-unit front yard encroachment with those modular units. I think we need to really stress the fact that this is a modular type of construction practice. Altering that to get that 4 feet is a significant impact to how we design these buildings and how we design the units. And we believe that we are protecting those two residences with a significant 16-foot setback. And I think the reduction in parking spaces, I think the Housing Authority has had great success with programs at similar type facilities. The parking count we got straight from the Housing Authority as what they felt would be the correct number of parking spaces they saw that was consistent with the El Carrillo or the Casa de las Fuentes, a percentage of actual car ownerships that the tenants had.
Especially since it's downtown. There's a lot of bus routing, biking, walking to work, out of suburban areas.
Okay.
I think, and then finally the entry tower, as we said, I don't really wanted to speak to that, but we felt that was supportable. When we started this process, it was not a modification request, and then that zoning change that these architectural elements that encroach into setbacks had to be 3 feet off the ground. That's where we changed.
Oh.
Yeah, so we started this process. It was
Oh, the tower wouldn't have needed a mod? I'm not really that big on the tower. The tower is not my biggest concern.
Okay, never mind then.
Okay, all right. I saw the ABR wants to work with you on that.
Okay.
And I will say that I think I agreed with them about the neon, you know.
Well, that was the first time we went there.
Yeah.
Although there was neon across the street, so we were
Okay.
being contiguous with the
But
neighborhood.
that's all I'm going to say about the tower. Okay.
The only thing I would add is, as far as the program and the operation of the property, we are sensitive to the city's needs and the county as far as the 10-year plan to end homelessness. We will be, a good portion of this will be to house people that were formerly homeless, special needs, and then we want to do a blend to where we do address downtown worker. We feel combining the two would be a good program, having the downtown worker living with the special needs or people coming out of homelessness.
Could you tell me how have the neighbors in the 2 projects on Carrillo got? How do they get along? Because that is, you have a mix of single-room occupancy, you know, formerly homeless, and downtown worker right next door to each other in different projects.
Yes, we operate them as 2 separate projects, but
they're neighbors.
They're neighbors, and we find that the people, once they do stabilize from homelessness, we have had a few of them transfer over to Casa de las Fuentes or transfer out into Section 8. To where they can go out into the community, into a private rental. So it's worked very nicely. Here they could actually make that social transition and not even have to move. So both projects have been very, very successful. We have been pleased. The city's been pleased. We've not heard any complaints from the neighbors. The parking situation, as we've discussed, at El Carrillo, I believe we have 17 parking spaces, and we have maybe 3 or 4 cars there.
I noticed they're really empty.
Yeah. With Casa de las Fuentes, I believe we have about 45 parking spaces, and at the maximum there's maybe 30 spaces used. We actually built El Carrillo and used Casa de las Fuentes for the parking for the construction workers, and that worked out very well. So this one, we feel the 40 parking spaces, we may even be a little, have a little more than what's necessary, but we want to have the cushion and don't want to impact the neighborhood.
I do have a question on parking. Because I'm familiar with the other 2 projects you mentioned, and those parking garages and the modifications that were involved there, I think it was the Las Fuentes where guest parking was going to be provided off-site, or some use of the commuter lot was envisioned. So I'm not quite sure what your actual experience has been regarding guest parking. And again, this modification is numerically seems to be tied to the guest number, but I don't want to necessarily assume that means there is no guest parking. So what was your parking management plan for this in terms of guest parking?
Well, as far as Casa de las Fuentes, I believe the concern at the time was, what if it does not work? Well, we had the alternative using the city lot. We haven't really had to use it.
Are people that are visiting the Casa Las Fuentes residents just, when they pull in, is there a sign that says for tenants and guests only?
Correct.
Does it say and guests?
The tenants actually have designated spaces.
Okay.
And the guests have designated spaces.
Okay.
And they're required to get a placard when they do come in to visit someone. If they're going to be there a long time, staying a couple days or something, they have to display a placard in the window. But even with that, I would say 30 spaces are utilized on the average.
Okay, I just noticed that the only condition, there's a couple conditions related to the parking modification. And I'm sure you were going to get to the bus shelter. You're all good with the bus shelter? You know you're building 2 bus shelters?
But there'll be 2 MTD standards along Coda Street, so likely consistent with...
not a major
infrastructure
Yeah.
one. But that was
Have
a
you
condition.
talked with the...
We haven't gone to MTD yet.
Okay. So there's the bus shelter, which I think is a appropriate condition to make the use of the transit upon which you're relying, more... just more functional. If people see good transit stops and there's information there that MTD can, add with poles and signage and things like that. And then on the parking, your residents would not be allowed to have a residential permit, but that I think is pretty standard and makes sense. I didn't think that would be a problem for you. There's this covenant that the garage be used for parking and for parking of your residents. That, I think, makes total sense. On occasion, we've had people lease out their parking to other entities, and I know that you have this vacant parking and you're not doing that. So, I understand. I think that's a workable condition. And I'm fine that we don't have more conditions about the parking management necessarily, but I wanted to know if your intention was to, and if the staff was aware, that this parking that some of it will be available to guests. Did I miss something?
In
Where's
part of the
that?
project description, I believe in the parking modification notes that 14 of the spaces will be designated as guest parking.
Okay, so we were saying it had to be 14?
14 guest parking
see.
spaces.
Yeah.
Page 4.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the requirement for you to come up with the number of required spaces. But that may not be how they're operating.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry if I can interrupt. My understanding was under that parking modification on page 4 at the bottom paragraph, a total of 24 bicycle spaces for residents and 6 spaces for guests.
Oh, okay, there it is.
Was my understanding of the requirement.
Okay. This wasn't laid out as a condition, I don't think, and maybe it doesn't need to be. But are you thinking that these are the 6 guest spaces, most likely?
It's on the plan. The way Casa de los Fuentes, and that's probably the best example, is that we will designate spaces. And if you're looking at 55 units, you'll have parking for the manager, but at least half of those tenants, the 55, they will not have vehicles whatsoever because a condition.
So you may end up with 20 assigned spaces somehow.
We'll have 20, say 20 assigned spaces. Everything else will be marked as guest parking. So we try to fill in where we can, and then the remaining spaces, we do have temporary placards that we mark as guest. Those will be guest parking.
Okay, because another thing, I should have brought this up as a question, but we're into it now, that's fine. I think people in the neighborhood park here now, like there's signs for nearby businesses. And, this condition is saying, when those people come back to you and say, gee, no one's parking here, can I lease this? Your answer's supposed to be no.
Well,
even though it's going to be possibly vacant and available, according to these conditions.
What currently happens is Hagen has the back portion
right
for
behind
parking,
their building, yes.
And a couple of these. There's another small business here. They have these spaces.
Oh, so they're on-site, not off-site people?
Correct.
Oh,
And what
okay.
happens, people pull in, there was a lot of work going on at this house, and all of the workers would pull in early in the morning and take these spaces. They'd have to chase them out. We will have this posted, and actually we have it set up so there can actually be a gate here, so that in order to get in, you would have to have an access code.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to think long-term. I think this is the appropriate way to manage the project at this time.
I just wanted to point out that the Housing Authority had submitted this as a sample vehicle limitation agreement. Steve Foley had taken a look at
Oh,
this.
sure. Okay. I'm familiar with that.
Okay.
You know, the fact that you can check their you know, whether or not they have driver's licenses and their vehicle registration, and the Housing Authority has the ability to do that. Anyway, for purposes of this parking modification at this time, you know, you can only have use of the site by your residents and their guests. Someday, if that changes, then it requires an amendment to the conditions. And I don't know that it
There's
ever
no
will.
intent to
Yeah,
do
but I
anything
know, but
other
there are
than-
other people like this person right next door, you know, that doesn't have any parking. So, anyway.
So we'd have to come back and say we don't
You
need as
want to
much
have
park.
a
We never
limited
have.
lease, ability to
We'd
lease
like to
or something like
amend
that.
it to rent out
Yeah.
the spaces.
We would see how this operates over 2 to 3 years, and then
Right.
go from
Okay.
there.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Are there any other parking-related issues to clarify? Okay. Any other comments on the conditions of approval?
I went real fast over that last condition, or are you saying mods?
Conditions?
Okay, so we're done with the mod conversation?
Yes.
Good. No? Do you have any comments?
They looked to me to be,
With regard to the MTD and the bus shelters, we would like to have the opportunity to discuss with MTD to see what their actual demands are. That was the confusion, or part of the confusion with El Carrillo, is that we were putting in a bus shelter where MTD maybe didn't necessarily feel it was appropriate, but we would like to have the opportunity to discuss with them, and if in fact the condition changes, we certainly would be bringing that back to discuss.
okay, the condition as it's worded now says, provide on the plans an inclusion of bus shelters at Dakota Street, bus stops at Olive Street. There's two, I guess, on either side of the street. Is that what we're
One
saying?
over here.
Olive and Coda for the MTD Crosstown Shuttle.
We will communicate with MTD.
And my understanding from working with MTD on prior projects, including El Carrillo, was they have plans that they don't expect to see a State Street quality shelter on auxiliary streets like Coda Street. And so my
Right.
understanding is that this is, right now, it's a sign, a bench, and a trash can, and that it would probably at most be a Milpas-style structure. But that was our understanding, without...
There's one's here and one...
One's across the street. One is across the street, adjacent to a transition
Yeah,
house,
that's that
and then
one.
there's one over on the bus towards the MTD bus
On
site.
the other side of the
across.
street at all.
Okay. Well, hopefully you talk with them and they
Yeah.
know what they want and you do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Again, I reviewed the conditions. I think also the Public Works Department is requesting some frontage improvements. You're aware of those? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the thorough review and discussion. Just to understand the project, I think next we're going to open a public hearing, so if one of you would give up your seat if members of the public want to come. I don't have any speaker slips. I have 3 people in the audience that have been following the project discussion. Is anyone interested in participating? Please come on up. Okay. I'm not sure if you've yet filled out the speaker slips.
No, we have not.
Okay.
But
Appreciate
we
you
will.
doing that in a minute. Okay, thank you. Your name?
Steve Ridgway.
Oh, yeah, accountant.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're the accountants. My name's Dave Mazzetta. We're both partners, and our other partner, Lucy Archuleta,
Okay.
with Ridgway and Warner, and we're the owner-users of the building that holds the easement
Okay.
around there. Which would be, I guess,
Right here.
This
This is Olive Street
yes,
here,
this
and this is
property
the
right
parking
here.
lot, and this is the driveway, the new driveway out.
Okay. I guess we have several concerns. And this is the first time we've seen this, so yeah, please bear with us. And first of all, what type of fence or barrier is along here? Because I know somebody was back there checking our property out, and they were at first talking about leaving it open.
No.
Okay.
As shown on the drawings, called out, and you'll see it on the elevations as well, what we're proposing is we'll be raising the grade a bit, so you'll see a bit of a wall 2 feet, 3 feet high, and then
It's
above
this
that
each.
is a wood fence.
Okay.
So here's, you
Okay.
can see the wall and then a fence on top of the wall. And this is your, if you go into your parking lot, that's what you would look at towards State Street. This is what the face of the building would look like, looking at towards State Street.
Okay. We get a certain amount of flow through, walking through our parking lot. It's not that much, and there's not that much activity back there. I guess we're a little concerned whether or not, having 55 residences, and whether or not there'd be an increased flow through of people walking through ours to get to, the Laguna. I don't know if there's any way that you can prevent that.
Can't walk through.
You can't put through that.
Yeah, it seems
Can't get through the site.
here, if people are on Olive Street, and they wanted to walk through your parking lot and around and into the project, they would do that. But I guess it's a matter of this gate, because otherwise I think if people that live here would probably rather walk on their own property by their garden and, check out the car, who's here, and go into their, versus, I don't think, it's just not very likely that people
It's
would.
just, it's a little, if you're coming from here, they tend to cut across.
And you can't get through here. This is all.
Oh,
Yeah,
excuse me, I meant Olive.
Yeah.
I didn't
can't
mean
get
there.
here.
Right now they're cutting through. I ride my bike through there a couple times a week just to look at the project. And
Right, my car's too. But that's okay, I'll give that up.
If I might,
Right, you won't be able to get through anymore.
Okay.
This is a parking garage and there's a wall.
Sure, I understand.
So that- yeah.
I really meant, coming out here to Olive.
I
And
see.
our expectation, honestly, is most of the use is going to come off of Coda, because we aren't going to have tenants with heavy car ownership. Most people are going to be walking, which means they're going to be coming probably from downtown or from Milpas. And the reality is the easiest way to get up and into the project is going to be straight off of Coda. I think you're probably going to see less impact on that side.
and the housing authority, it's our goal to be good, not just good neighbors, but great neighbors. We actually, if we had known you had concerns, we would have loved to have you come in and look at the plans.
And I think that could still happen. So we should go through initial type of questioning, and then I definitely think you all might want to be.
Since we use this as our exit,
Yes.
what are we talking about in terms of a gate?
Yeah, I'm wondering about that too.
Well, you would have an exit. This would open automatically if, in fact, we install the gate. We would like to see
You're
a
not
gate.
on. Can you look that up straight up? Just,
We would like to see a gate here because we are concerned even now when we go by there. People pull in there, people hang out there, we don't like it. So if in fact we put a gate, it would discourage people from coming in. You going around, it would be an automatic open as you exit. And again, we would work that out with the neighbors. If they were opposed to it, we could always put a gate back near the garage, but we'll work with the neighbors.
So we just automatically open and
Yeah.
drive your
An
car
exit,
forward like
normally.
Like normal gates for fire access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Entrances are usually more of a control,
You can't
but there'd be a light that notices your car coming in and opens, that type
It's
of
on the
thing.
ground, yeah, something like that.
But do you actually propose a gate at this time, or is that more of an operational question?
I think
I
at this
wasn't
point
sure,
we-
has
what's
ABR seen
number
a gate?
39?
I think it was mentioned as a gate, sliding gate.
Backflow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if we have it there, but
Yeah, I don't think that we were
didn't-
aware of
No,
the
I
gate.
was not aware of that.
Okay.
so
All right.
it's something we would want to consider, and we'll talk to the neighbors about it and see how it would impact you.
Yeah. Earlier, you said that there were no adjacent residential units.
Yes, you
Well,
did.
we're aware of the one, yeah.
Okay.
This little building here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they just finished remodeling.
Yeah.
And commenting about that, that is the reason why we left this initially. We were going to put units in here. We talked about doing a podium where you could drive under and put units above it, and we respected that that's a residence. We said, let's keep it the way it is right now.
Okay.
During construction, is this going to be kept open? Because, we're an operating business. This is our way of getting off.
We took that when we've been thinking about our construction plan, and obviously took into consideration that you have a designated easement that we need to respect, of course. So our expectations is to respect that easement, and then we can continue where that parking and community garden is located. But obviously, we can put a staging area there and a construction trailer. It will be out of your way. So we have been thinking in terms of how to protect your easement.
Other questions?
This currently is where the trash is and the recyclables. Would that continue to be the spot for us, or is
Yes.
there going to be?
Your spot is right here, right? Where it says trash.
Says
And
trash.
we've noted it as well. And we're protecting that opening.
It's on your property, right?
And you
Yeah.
kind
Right
of get
at
to
the
it from
edge.
the easement, right?
Yeah, there's a little pad. I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's upside
This
down.
is an
basement.
Edison pad.
Yeah.
It's
the,
here.
the existing ones for this parcel are now here, but we're moving those to a little enclosed area underneath the roof. Yours is remaining here.
Okay.
And you get to it right now, you go onto the easement and pull the
Things out
rollout
this
off.
way.
Right. That's out there. So that's remaining.
And if you look at our civil drawings, we're holding the grades there.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing any impact to how that works, how that functions.
And I get, and the other impact would just be that people might enter our entryway and just go this way. But you guys are saying from experience they'll use the gate.
Well,
The people that live there will live
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
They won't.
there will be an on-site manager, and we put the manager towards the front. And we will want them to be in communication with you. If you have problems, we want to be able to address it. We cannot say no one will
Yeah.
come in there. I know the existing condition, and I have the same concern. We work very closely with our managers. That's why we have the community rooms. So get the people together and express the concerns, and we want to reduce it to the extent we can.
And you guys are aware that Olive Street is pretty narrow
Right.
in terms of cars there, because when we typically go out this way, because when you come out this way with the cars that are parked, it's kind of hard to see cross traffic.
Yes.
There'll be, a part of the conditions we have from Public Works is there'll be more red striping on the south side, so you're going to have a better view line.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from the Public Works Transportation staff who's joined us. Steve Foley?
Steve Foley from Transportation, Public Works Transportation. I just wanted to speak to the gate as far as when you're designing that, because one of the things that we are concerned about is vehicles that are accessing the site, that they do not impede the traffic and the pedestrians that are using the sidewalk. So typically what we're looking for is the gate to be 20 feet back from the edge of the right-of-way.
And I guess my comment on the gate is, in the event that the applicant proposes a gate, strongly recommend that your application include a communication from your neighbor as to their understanding of how the gate's going to function. And then, of course, it wouldn't be approved without transportation review, and so your team is going to be consulting with them on the technicalities. And then you also will have, of course, to run it by the Architectural Board of Review for what it looks like. Okay. Do you have more questions about the project as a whole?
Well, just one
Okay.
thing, and that was you guys had mentioned having office space for caseworkers.
Right up here.
Caseworkers. we don't know how your system functions.
Well, people coming out of homelessness, our philosophy is you don't just give them a place to live, you give them the resources to stabilize themselves. So if people have any kind of problems or issues that they need to be working out, they'll typically be assigned a caseworker. So we want to have caseworkers on site so the tenants don't have to leave and go somewhere else. We want to have people on the site where they can go into the office, they can meet with them.
Okay.
It's what we do at El Carrillo, and that has been very, very successful.
Okay. And then you were also referring to bus shelters. Would bus shelters be like bus stops?
Right. We were talking
Okay.
about that there's a condition for bus shelters, and there are currently bus stops on this line. It's the Crosstown Shuttle line, the little... And so you want them to get transportation, I imagine this is your condition. I'd like to see them enhanced. Maybe it'll be a simple wood structure over the stop now.
And we had received a letter from the Metropolitan Transit District asking for the improvements there. So the two existing bus stops typically would receive a bench, a trash can, and a
cover.
Cover.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much, and you've made some contacts now for more information in the future.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
did you
you.
hear,
Thanks.
Steve, did you hear our discussion about the guest parking? Okay, and so there's no specific condition regarding guest parking. That's probably good. The condition is that the parking on this site is for this site's tenants and guests.
And guests, correct.
But not, and I think that's probably better to keep it open for management.
A little flexibility,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. And then I'd ask the applicant if they'd read all the conditions and they said they understood them.
Betty?
Okay.
Betty, would it be apropos to within the final conditions that I've got two mics on it. They don't like that. They don't like that usually. That the final conditions could state that, because right now the condition states you can only do it that way, but I'd hate to have
Only do what way?
only have parking, blah blah blah, like you just mentioned.
Yes.
Let's stay on that one. But it doesn't sound. There's no spirit to that you should come back if indeed you want to in the future. Come back and make an application for that. It almost sounds like you can't ever do it by the way the condition's written.
Oh, okay.
If we could write the condition, whereas if those things change, you come back in and see, and talk about it. I'd like to keep it a little bit more flexible in that spirit.
Okay. The condition is that the owners shall record in the records of the county on the land a covenant that includes a requirement that the garage be kept open and available for parking vehicles owned by the residents of the property in the manner. So it doesn't even actually say anything about guests. But I had mentioned that if they wanted to amend it in the future, they would come and request a project amendment. I understand where you're coming from, but the fact of the matter is, even when you write in and you can't amend this, that's not true. You can always come back and amend something.
Okay.
So I don't really want to say that this may be amended in the future because I think we don't really know much about that either. So
Okay.
let's just leave this legal standard process as...
That's
yeah.
nice it's on the record.
And it's on the record, so if we need to do it in the future.
Yeah, and this point on the record is hardly going to be what makes the decision down the road. It's
Right.
going to be the facts and the situation down the road. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'd like to walk through my overall thoughts towards an action on the project. And looking at the findings in the staff report. The staff report, Betsy did an excellent job considering the city's general plan policies that support affordable housing and special needs housing as your proposed. Also, regarding the bonus density modification, the acknowledgement of the site location and proximity to jobs and transit, that you're housing very low-income people. I did want to, I think, add to that finding number A a few points that came up in the discussion here. Oh, yeah, so you do have based on unit size. Good. That's in the finding. Your finding says the general plan land use element allows for this. I want to add a point, the unit size is just over 400 square feet, which is small.
Net square feet.
Okay. And then I wanted to also acknowledge, you say, the project will provide 55 residential units for very low and consistent with the city's affordable housing policies. I'd like to say consistent with the city's housing element and affordable housing policies. Okay. So in that regard, the purpose for the project, the bonus density, I can support that modification. The modifications regarding the setbacks. This is one finding for the proposed front, interior, and rear yard modifications are consistent with the purpose, intent, and zoning ordinance necessary to construct this affordable housing project. The intent of the yard setbacks in terms of buffering adjacent land uses is met by the adjacent parking lot and walkways that surround the proposed development. Additionally, the design of the project and its size, bulk, and scale appears to be appropriate for the, and I was going to say, predominantly commercial neighborhood. So clarifying what we mean when we say neighborhood there. And it also said the design, size, bulk, and scale, that covers, I think, articulation and all this stuff that you guys were saying. So I think that's good. I did want to add here that a few more thoughts to support these modifications is that the garage is designed to meet the minimum dimensions. So that supports the interior yard modification. And then I think I was wondering about the 16-foot setback from the front. The comment, the design, size, bulk, and scale is appropriate. That covers that, I think. So we don't really have to say anything about that. Okay. All right. Then the parking modification to provide 40 spaces instead of the required, and what number do you want to see there?
I think if we add up the 56 and plus 14, we come up with 56, 70.
70. Okay.
We
So
had 74, but I think because we put in a
I
few
know.
for,
we
some of
got
the
confused with
commercial
the
spaces.
office.
But those are all related
Yeah.
to the project, so they don't require a separate. So we'll change that to 70. Also, I think for staff, Gloria and Betsy, when you do the resolution on the applications, it should say modification to provide 40 instead of 70. Correct it there, too, on this list of applications. Okay. Will not be inconsistent with the purpose intent, will not cause an increase in demand for these reasons. One, it's an affordable city housing authority which will have restricted vehicle ownership and lease agreements. Yes. The project is located in the downtown within walking, cycling distance of many services. A bus stop and transit center within walking distance from the project site. I don't know what we mean transit center. You mean
Does it
the
matter?
transit
The
center?
transit center over.
Does that matter, though?
I might want to strike that. I mean,
No one goes to the transit center, do they?
oh, okay, and connection to? Okay. Within walking distance project site, and there's adequate guest parking on site that would be available in the evenings and on weekends. Isn't it just available in general, or do we just feel that it's available in the evenings and weekends? Is available. Okay. Okay. Then there's there's another statement about transit. Okay, I'm fine with that too. All right. Yes, Mr. Kato.
I'd like to suggest one a revision to finding B.
Okay.
Fourth from the bottom at the very end, it says size, bulk, and scale appears to be appropriate. We just went to a training on findings, and you should be more definitive about that. So we would recommend
Is? Okay.
That's good.
Okay. You're going to have some good findings here.
Can go right to the building department with these?
Excuse
We'll
me?
go right to the building department.
Oh, no. I asked you many times, did you read all the conditions? You have some more work to do still. Okay. All right, with that, I'm happy to approve your special needs affordable housing project. I think that the project is well conceived, properly located. It's a great location. The architectural concept, size, bulk, and scale, appropriately designed in terms, I hope, in terms of the parking spaces. And when I say I hope, that it's not too many. I feel confident that the demands will be managed appropriately by the housing authority. So with this approval, today I've made the findings as modified, and all actions taken here by the staff hearing officer can be appealed to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And the Planning Commission has an oversight authority for these projects. We did make it known to the Commission that this project was on the calendar for today, and so we'll be reporting to the liaison and the Commission the action taken today. I'm sure they're interested just because it is furthering housing element policies, and hopefully, again, the liaisons or chair will have an opportunity to talk with staff or review the hearing so they understand what was happening today with this approval. So.
And I would like to compliment city staff. It has been a pleasure to work with all of you, Steve, Betsy, and Danny. This has been a very nice experience, and we're pleased we can do something good for the community here.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Second that
All
one.
right. Okay, with that last item, we're now adjourned.